Welcome everyone, my name is Patrycja Rozwora and I'm the host of Kitchen Conversations, a platform to speak about contemporary art from so-called Eastern Europe. In each episode, you're gonna be introduced to one artist, sometimes also a collective, whose visual or activist practice sheds light onto the complex former socialist region, with all its histories, cultures, languages, foods, but also traumas and their inevitable contemporary consequences. The podcast is a fully independent platform existing since May 2020. If you enjoy the monthly conversations, you can support me via Patreon or share the episodes with your friends or via social channels. Welcome back everyone, hope you're doing well despite this kind of grayness outside of our windows. That of course depends on where you live and where you're listening from. Perhaps you're at the other side of the world from me and there you have beautiful sun outside of your window. Here in Berlin it's gray since about 2 months, so I haven't seen sun for very long. This kind of was a little bit tough on me, I have to say. It's difficult to wake up and kind of find the motivation to create. I do have a lot of ideas for this year, but I feel my kind of motivation is a little bit slower. Therefore, I thought podcasting is always a good moment to kind of get back the energy, since I want to share with you stuff I know and stuff I think is important. And that's why I decided to create once again this solo episode. I started with those already last year, just at the beginning of the full-scale invasion war, Russia's war on Ukraine. Created 4 of those episodes for Ukraine, where I speak about the culture and arts of Ukraine to kind of invite you to research further and get interested in the literature, films, visual arts from Ukraine and by Ukrainian artists. And this episode will also have this format, yet for this one I didn't ask anyone to give me the recommendations, but you will hear my own recommendations, and we will stay in the genre of film, since I think the winter months definitely provide the mood and vibe for cinema and for being kind of comfy on your sofa and watching something under the blanket and with a cup of tea. My first recommendation for you today is a short film titled The Fall of Lenin by Ukrainian filmmaker Svitlana Shymko. The film is from 2017 and it's only 11 minutes long. It's a short, experimental, very funny actually, documentary working with the photo montage. So most of the material, or even all of it, is archival footage that is put together. And I was lucky to see the film a couple of weeks ago here in Berlin in Kino Arsenal. That's the Institute for Film and Video Art here in the city. And the filmmaker Svitlana Shymko was there. She was also shortly introducing the film before. What was striking to me and to the audience, after a short introduction of the film, she also introduced the editor of the film, Viktor Onysko, who, as she said, is a big part of the film, since in photomontage, of course, the editor's hand is very, very important as the director's. She said she would love him to be there and introduce the film together with her, but unfortunately he died in the war, in the current war in Ukraine a couple of months ago, and he cannot be here to present the film. Of course, it was a very shocking message and kind of a reality check, I think, for us being safe in a cinema space, that the war is still going on. And despite the fact that the film is actually quite humorous and quite lightweight in contrast to the topic of the work, I thought it was very important that Svitlana told us about Viktor, and of course the whole screening was dedicated to him and to many other people who currently are fighting for the freedom of Ukraine and for democracy, and I think it's fair to say for the freedom of Europe. The film, as the title indicates, speaks about the fall of Lenin, and more precisely, the fall of the Lenin sculptures and the monuments that were put across the Soviet Union and the satellite states, so of course Poland as well and East Germany. You can still see some of the remnants of it here in Berlin, to glorify, of course, the founding father of the Soviet Union, Vladimir Lenin. Later, after the fall of the Soviet Union, most of the countries decided to kind of destroy the monuments or do something else with them. Like here, for example, in Berlin, a lot of the problematic monuments got placed in Citadel Spandau. That's like a place to the forgotten and unwanted and problematic monuments. So actually it's quite exciting. I was there. It's like a big museum for the sculptures that shouldn't be seen in public spaces anymore. The cancelled sculptures, we could say. And so in Ukraine, somehow a lot of those monuments to Lenin still remained in public spaces. And as told by the director, Svitlana Shymko, before the screening, it wasn't only the big cities, but also smaller cities, also villages, towns, thousands of monuments to Lenin all across Ukraine. But then in 2015, so that's the period of the Maidan revolution, of the annexation of Crimea, of the beginning actually of this war that is now going on, that started in Donbass, in the eastern region of Ukraine. The Ukrainian government launched a law that was supposed to demolish all those monuments. So all the Lenins in the whole country were supposed to go to the ground. So inspired by the decommunization law in Ukraine, which of course also opens the topic of why was it called decommunization and not de-Sovietization, right? That was also addressed by Svitlana before the movie or after, I don't remember anymore. But she, and of course Viktor as well, the editor, use various archival images from those monuments falling or being destroyed, being smashed by people, and combine them with archival footage of those monuments being built up and being revealed to the society as something proud, located in important squares, parks, streets. Funnily enough, there was some other archival footages used in this film from another movie that I was already telling you about in episode 4 for Ukraine, a film titled Enthusiasm, the Symphony of Donbass by Dziga Vertov, where he shows the industrialization of eastern Ukraine by the Soviet Union, and how people were basically put to work and everything was taken away from them. Most importantly, religion. So in the film, we see the destruction of religious towers, of religious icons, symbols, and these particular images are also being used in the film The Fall of Lenin. The film speaks, of course, about, at least for me, about the ghost of communism, the ghost of socialism that is still hunting Eastern Europe and at the moment hunting Ukraine in a very murderous, bloody way. And of course opens discussion about monuments that is very relevant as well, came up with the Black Lives Matter and the fall of monuments to various colonial leaders. Is it important for us to actually smash the stone sculptures? Should we hide them or should we actually keep them as a monument of history that shouldn't be repeated? Of course, it needs context, it needs information, it should be put in a specific historical place and not be read as something current. Maybe they do have to be smashed and destroyed, who knows? And I think Svitlana opens this conversation in a quite lightweight and therefore accessible way.
Вызываем дух Владимира Ильича Ленина.
We raise the ghost of Vladimir Ilyich Lenin.
Кем вы были в предыдущей
What were
жизни?
you in your previous life?
Ангелом, Владимир Ильич.
Angel. Vladimir Ilyich, I understand. It's nice to be an angel. Were you a good angel? No.
Ну, мы к вам все равно относимся.
But we'll treat you normally anyway. My second recommendation is a feature-length documentary film titled The Hamlet Syndrome by two Polish directors, Elwira Niewiera and Piotr Rosołowski, who are both based here in Berlin. And I was lucky to see the film in a small kind of underground cinema just next door to me, Kino Krokodil, that is actually specialized in Eastern European films. So to be very honest with you, it was quite tough to get into the movie. It is made in Ukrainian and Russian, and I watched it with German subtitles. And although I do speak German, actually it's the second language of mine, it is not so easy for me to read and write. I'm more familiar with like the spoken language. So it was quite a challenge to follow the subtitles. Also, the room was full. I sat kind of in the back. 5-10 minutes into the film, I decided to kind of take my stuff and sit in the corridor on the floor to be able to kind of see the subtitles. I'm also quite a short person, so that's always a bit the problem for me, that if there's subtitles and there's a lot of tall people in front of me, that's a bit hard. So yeah, after some time, I got a bit more into the movie. And I have to say, at the end of it, I was really mind blown with the concept of it, with the idea, with the research, with the work being done, and also with the ideas that were brought forward with this film. And I'm super happy that I can share it with you here. Both filmmakers were actually present at the screening, and after the film, they shared quite some insights into the making of the film, into the research, into the individual characters who appear in the film. And the striking thing was that the whole research and the whole process started actually back in 2017 or 18. And what the filmmakers wanted is to give platform to the people who actually fought in the Donbass war and show what war does to people, show a bit the context of what is happening in East Ukraine. Why did people decide to fight in war or got drafted? How did it affect them psychologically? How did it affect their relations with their family, friends? A very honest, difficult and complex portrait of war. So the whole genius, in my opinion, about this film was that it was documenting a physical, real theater play. So the idea of the filmmakers was to create a theater play where characters, actors, but also just people who are comfortable with acting in some way, but / documenting and reenacting their own characters, will speak about war in a very complex way. And how they argumented it was that only through art on stage and through a performative act, you are able to really get in touch with the deepest feelings and speak about what war actually does to one, and what it changes in you, in your relations. Also speaking about aspects of nationality, of history, of social relations, and so on and so on. Due to the pandemic and then, of course, the beginning of the full-scale war, the premiere had to be postponed. And it just came out at the end of 2022, the movie, and to the German cinemas just now. But the striking thing about it was that the filmmakers said they didn't change much, actually, of the content, because somehow it became so relevant and so applicable to the current situation, which is, of course, very scary, that it's just an ongoing thing and people just go again through the same. And many of the characters are now actually again at the front line fighting. This was, of course, also added at the beginning, at the end of the film, but the whole inside, the whole content was just the one that was filmed a couple of years ago. And it's, of course, pretty crazy that a film that was supposed to talk about the Donbass war and the conflict in East Ukraine that, of course, affected the whole country and the whole region, but nevertheless wasn't a full-scale war on a sovereign country. Now it turned into a film about the war in Ukraine. And what was also quite memorable from the evening was that at the end, after the screening and after the Q&A, one of the filmmakers, Elvira, she played us a video from one of the characters of the film, because the audience who was asking, how are the people doing? Are they, basically still alive? I mean, you don't know now. In Ukraine, there's so many horrible things like shelling, bombing, basically all the time. And she said, indeed, we are in touch with those people because for all these years, we really developed very strong bonds and connections. And we actually recently got a video from one of the men who before in Donbass was a medic and now again is at the very front line. Is really still in the East Ukraine, where it's really bad at the moment. And we saw this vlog of this man, like maybe 5 minutes in a cinema screen. I had to say it really made a big impact on me. I thought maybe there was even a trigger warning needed, although I don't know, maybe we just need to be confronted with the reality of what is happening. But it was somehow different to see kind of a phone-made video in the cinema. It felt way more real than the film, although the film was also a documentary, where the man is basically, telling how his day is. He just woke up, it's the morning. He's just telling how he's kind of managing. He's a medic, so he's obviously seeing the worst. He's trying to keep people alive, save them. But, of course, in the background, you hear bombs, like falling every 10 seconds. Really scary. It gives you shivers. And I thought it was powerful and needed to show this to people, also to kind of, again, give us this reality check that something that is now a film in cinemas, kind of as part of, let's say, the entertainment, is actually someone's reality, and we are watching real people and real lives. The great thing was that the whole event was also a moment to donate money. Both filmmakers and also the hosts in the cinema were advocating for donating for energy supplies, for generators, for hospitals in Ukraine. So that was also great that film could bring so much in the form of content, research, stories, but also kind of connected to the now and to the current situation, and also how we from here can actually help and support.
А ти вбивала? А ти стріляла? А що ти відчувала, коли ти стріляла?
Яке з'єбане мудло, блядь, бігає нахуй зайчиком, блядь, коли мене війна, сука. Я не хочу! Не хочу!
And last but not least, I have for you Infinity According to Florian, a documentary film made by Ukrainian filmmaker and writer Oleksiy Radynsky. So Oleksiy is a Kiev-based filmmaker, but also great writer and critic. He writes a lot in English, so check it out. I think his work is very important and relevant. And his film premiered last year, 2022, in the Rotterdam Film Festival. I actually had the chance to interview Oleksiy on another podcast, which I will link in the show notes if you're interested, for Pavilion. It's an art institution in Poznań, in Poland. And I spoke to Oleksiy about this film and about his practice at large. And I thought the film was really great, and it has potential about looking at Ukraine and in general at Europe through a different light, with different modes of knowledge production. And I thought at the end of this short episode to tell you a little bit about this film and encourage you to watch it. So basically, as the title tells us, the story is about Florian, and Florian is an artist, a musician, painter, also a filmmaker, architect, designer, all of it. And he is an old man at the moment the film is being made, who is trying to protect a very special architectural piece in Kiev that he built during the Soviet times, that is now being taken over and is supposed to be implemented into a shopping mall district. So the building he designed and created back in the day looks like a kind of spaceship, and it is colloquially called the flying saucer. And Florian designed it with a very specific purpose. He, since always, was fascinated with music and colors. And this building was supposed to be kind of a music hall where you could listen to music and see color at the same time. So the whole architecture of this space and the design of it was supposed to accommodate these both things. However, now the city is changing, and there is powerful people with money coming who want to get this flying saucer and use it for money purpose, of course. And in the film, we see Florian discussing with these entrepreneurs, with these powerful people. One of them, the leader, the main guy, is actually a Russian oligarch, which, as Oleksiy told me, is not anymore in Ukraine for obvious reasons, but for many years was actually owning a lot of parts, a lot of buildings in Kiev. And the film kind of shows a different idea of what architecture is, of what the public space can be, how we should understand ourselves within the public space. Florian tells in a beautiful way how he sees us as humans in symbiosis with the environment, also with the urban environment, but also the ecological system at large. And I think there is so many beautiful, big ideas which we can take out of this film, out of this story of an older man who his whole life spent on building this amazing, very special construction that now is just being taken over and turned into a fancy Western-looking shopping mall. Of course, I have to say the film was made before the full-scale war, so you see Kiev as it was before. It might, be very sad and heavy, of course, for those, especially for those who are from Kiev. It was also filmed before the pandemic, and due to different reasons premiered only last year. But I think it does have this potential of looking for something that will come after the war, that will give Ukraine perhaps a new breeze to build, to rebuild, maybe on different values than the Western capitalist one, then on this kind of weird imitation and this kind of resentment of always being like the younger brother or the younger sister, but using thoughtful people, people who lived through different times and have a lot to say. For example, like Florian, to think differently about a new Ukraine. I thought, at least that's what I took from this film, and I definitely recommend you to watch it and take something out of it for yourselves. And this was it for today. I hope at least one of the films inspired you to go watch it. I'm placing the trailers and the names, of course, to the films, to the filmmakers in the show notes, as well as a few links of where to find the movies online. I'm also recommending to check out the Kitchen Conversations cookbook, a collection of favorite home dishes recommended by the first 17 artists who appeared on the podcast. You can always support my work here with becoming a Patreon of Kitchen Conversations. It is very important because that's actually the only way a small podcast like mine can get support and at least a little bit of money for the work we are doing. And my podcast can be supported already from $2.50 per month, so that's around a cappuccino per month. And if you are now listening on Spotify, please go and rate my podcast. This really helps in kind of spreading it over these magical streaming platforms. I just managed to kind of bring this rating stars up on my profile, so when enough people rate, it actually appears, and I have a 5-star rating, which is amazing. Thank you so much for doing so. So for any of you who is still listening on Spotify and didn't rate it yet, go do so, and this will really help me grow this podcast as well. In the meantime, stay healthy, treat yourselves well, and we hear each other soon.